we're happy to welcome Steve Auth to the living room to discuss his newest book, Pilgrimage to the Museum. Steve, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Monet, and happy birthday to you guys and to Sister Evelyn. Very nice.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, Steve, welcome back to the show. I know we've had you on before on This Is the Day, and to discuss even our culture right now, to really just go right into what we're seeing. It's so far removed from the transcendentals of our faith, which we know as truth, beauty, and goodness. How do you think, through sacred art, through what you offer in your book, how can we be drawn back to the transcendentals?
Well, you know, God is beauty, Monet, as you know, and it's really been interesting, the reaction to the Pilgrimage to the Museum, because the entire thesis of the book is that all artists are given a special talent, like all of us. Their talent happens to be to describe beauty. And so in many ways, artists, I think, are pursuing God in their own souls, the image of God, even when they don't know it. So you mentioned sacred art because people assume this must be a pilgrimage to sacred art. And there is some beautiful sacred art in the Pilgrimage to the Museum, but probably 2/3 of the art is not overtly religious at all, although much of it has deep spiritual value. And what we see, starting out with ancient Egypt, and you know, we've been given this pilgrimage to the museum as a tour of the Met. It started out as a tour, became a pilgrimage as our own faith evolved, and we saw things in the art that we had not originally seen. But you know, we start out in ancient Egypt and we end up, you know, with Jackson Pollock and Salvador Dali, and in between, and you see the kind of journey of us trying to find God through beauty. Yeah. And you know, I think it's a great apostolate for the church because as we've seen with reaction to this book, all sorts of people have become interested because they're drawn by the beautiful images. And I think they're all kind of seeking God somehow, even when they don't realize it. And I think if you take the pilgrimage, you read the pilgrimage, you'll find God in its pages.
And talk about that fact, if you could, Steve, too, about the term pilgrimage. And when people think of pilgrimage, maybe they could go into the Holy Land or things like that. And how going to see art can be a pilgrimage. Talk about that aspect of people's journey through this beautiful transportation of going through the several different parts.
Right. So, I mean, life's a journey, right? And life's a pilgrimage in some ways. And the difference between just a trip to the museum or a tour and a pilgrimage is a pilgrimage is a place you go to discover something new. And it usually requires a certain amount of physical work. And our pilgrims to the museum have all of those things. I mean, the tour is 3.5 hours. We're going up and down back staircases and side alleys to connect 5,000 years of history in 3.5 hours. And most people go to a museum these days and they spend 45 minutes, you know, they got the audio tape where God has been literally sanitized out, right? Yeah. We try to describe art without describing the actual subject. And, you know, isn't it true, like after the first 45 minutes, you're starting to get a little bit bored and teary-eyed, you know, bleary-eyed, but you don't want to leave. You're like, oh, I'd be a bore if I left. You're going to hang in there another 45 minutes, and then you drag yourself out. And then you come on the pilgrimage. And the pilgrims that come on this adventure, 3.5 hours, are literally gripped at 3 hours and 32 minutes. I mean, and people are following us. And the guards, you know, we've gotten used to the guards coming up to us thinking they're going to throw us out, and really they're actually listening. And it became so popular we couldn't bring enough people on it, and that's what led us to my wife and I to write The Pilgrimage to the Museum.
That's beautiful. Well, Steve, when someone even just looks at the cover of your book, it's a beautiful image of someone really standing in front of these beautiful pieces of art in front of them. So someone looking at the book cover may think, oh, am I going to see, art pieces that are all throughout the book? Is it going to be just purely description? What will people get when they purchase their book inside the covers?
Well, Sophia did such a beautiful job, and that cover has, I told them, let's make sure we have paintings from almost every period, because we're covering 5,000 years. And one of the things that they did that's so beautiful about the book is rather than put all the glossy color prints in the center, which is the less expensive way to do it, but you lose the feeling of the journey. So the paintings appear with the text as you're going. And it becomes like a page turner, actually. You're following your own journey in faith, maybe, but man's journey through 5,000 years of history trying to find God through art. And I think people, they tell me that they experience being on a pilgrimage, reading the pilgrimage to the museum.
Beautiful.
It's very beautiful. Yeah.
Now, you've been and you've taken people on the pilgrimage, Steve. I wondered if you had a particular piece, art piece, that you thoroughly enjoy or speaks to you a little bit more.
Well, we, every night we go to a dinner afterwards, and everyone tells us about their favorite piece. And we have prayer cards for every painting. And the spouses have to guess their spouse's favorite piece. And Evelyn and I participate. And our deal is that we have to guess our favorite piece that night, because every night something else speaks to us. But I'll give you one from my position on Wall Street. So it's a painting by Rembrandt. I like to call it Rembrandt's greatest self-portrait. And I particularly like to say that as one of the Met docents goes by, because they're kind of snickering, like, well, the guy doesn't even know that's not a self-portrait of Rembrandt. And it isn't his visage. But it's a painting of Rembrandt's soul and in struggle. He's in this, it's called Aristotle with the Bust of Homer. And at the time, his own personal life is in disarray, and he's really involved in a deep moral crisis, which is discussed in the book. But he gets asked to paint a painting of a Greek philosopher, so he chooses Aristotle with the Bust of Homer. And the image has Rembrandt, Aristotle. You know it's Aristotle because you see the medallion of Alexander the Great on his chest, which is his favorite, his big student, conquers the world. And he's got his right hand on the bust of Homer, which is virtue. And his left hand is on this gold chain that the ill-gotten riches of the world sent to him by Alexander the Great. And as you observe the painting, you see that his hand on virtue, on Homer, is kind of patting the head of Homer. It's not gripping it. And then the other hand, the hand on the gold chain is also fingering the gold chain. It's not gripping it. And then you look at the face, and somehow Rembrandt manages to paint the soul, his soul, I think, in the face. The struggle, do I take the virtuous path, or do I grab the gold chain that's in my fingers? I can feel it. Yeah. And isn't that all of us, right? Every day on Wall Street, I have the opportunity. Faith is a lifelong commitment and a daily struggle, and every day is that struggle. Do I take the gold chain, or do I stay on the path of virtue? And that painting really speaks to me. I mean, there's so many that do. But, that's one, if you're going to ask me today, my favorite one. That's my favorite today.
That's great. Well, Steve, thank you for providing us that beautiful imagery to sit with today. And for those that want to sit with further artwork that you have compiled in your book, Pilgrimage to the Museum, where can people go to purchase their copy today?
They can certainly get it at the Sophia Institute website. It's on Amazon. It's at Barnes & Noble. It's at the Met Bookstore. But best to get it from Sophia. It's a nonprofit. Support our Catholic publishers. They did a great job with the book.
Wonderful. Well, Steve, God bless you and all the good work you and your wife are doing, and thank you again for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you,
You're
Kevin.
welcome.